titans, the best keyboard tappers in the land. They've all been training for this moment. Who's getting stuck in the function sand? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? Excel on the shirt. Leanne is.
can't win because she's not resident in the UK, but can take part and have a lot of fun.
Jack is on the hunt. Will
London
be her new peak. It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? Excel on the shirt. Leanne is on a win streak.
Not in the UK, she's not.
Jack is on the hunt.
She's actually organising this competition, but it doesn't matter.
Will Vegas be her new peak? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? It's the battle of the titans, the best keyboard tappers in the land. They've all been training for this moment. Who's getting stuck in the function sand? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? Excel on the shirt. Leanne is.
can't win because she's not resident in the UK, but can take part and have a lot of fun.
Jack is on the hunt. Will
London
be her new peak. It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? Excel on the shirt. Leanne is on a win streak.
not in the UK, she's not.
Jack is on the hunt.
I'm going to be able to hear you guys. You're going to be not hearable on the stream.
It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? It's the battle of the titans, the best keyboard tappers in the land. They've all been training for this moment. Who's getting stuck in the function sand? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? Excel on the shirt. Leanne is.
can't win because she's not resident in the UK, but can take part and have a lot of fun.
Jack is on the hunt. Will
London
be her new peak.
UK.
Championship, who is going to win? It's the Excel.
UK.
Championship, who's going in the spreadsheet bin? Excel on the shirt, Leanna's on a win streak.
Not in the UK, she's not.
Jack is on the hunt.
She's actually organising this competition, but it doesn't matter.
Will Vegas be her new peak? It's the Excel
UK.
Championship. Who is going to win? It's the Excel
UK.
Championship. Who's going in the spreadsheet bin? It's the
Okay then, hello everyone and welcome. Welcome to those of you watching us live and those of you watching us after the fact. This is the FNWC UK official training session. We are 11, I should know this off the top of my head really, 11 days away from our live finals, and we're just running this session to have a couple of key skills out there for if you're looking to get up to speed. Whether that is you want to join for the first time to follow along with the finals, or you're just getting into esports, whether you're one of our finalists that's going to be joining us in London, or if you are someone competing in the wider competition, maybe you're newer to that wider competition and you want to get ahead on some skills as well. The shape of today, we're going to go through some general skills that I find really useful with these kinds of challenges, probably about 20 minutes on that. Then we'll do about 20 minutes working through some of the questions on old money, which was the previous case from our final round of the UK competition so far. It was a very difficult Harry Watson case, so we're going to go through some of those cases and just work out how I would approach it. Obviously there's always more than one way to approach these things. And then finally we'll go into some Q&A. Some people have sent me some questions ahead of time, and then if anyone watching the stream either on YouTube or Discord have any questions as we go, they can let me know and we will sort that out. I do currently have Discord muted. If people are asking me questions live via Discord via audio, I will try to remember to unmute that, but I will repeat those questions back as well, just to be sure. Today we're going to be using this data set and this training set of challenges that I put together for the Nice Championship training event. I'm just going to move to my screen share. There we go. So we're going to be using these data sets. This data set is based on a fictional board game company. As you may have noticed, we like board games in this household. We have a series of product IDs, product names, bunch of data about them, and some information on orders and the individual products ordered. We don't need to worry too much about that. Where we'll explain things as we go. The first and most important thing in these competitions is lookups. I am the XLOOKUP king. I absolutely love XLOOKUP. I have solved entire cases using only XLOOKUP. Doesn't matter if you want to use VLOOKUP or index match. I will judge you just a little bit if you do, but make sure you have something down to be able to retrieve data quickly. So that might be something that lets you just really quickly pull out data based on one lookup criteria. So looking up the product ID in a column and returning the name. Just a note there, all of these data sets are formatted as Excel tables, and I am using Control and Space there to select the whole column. So I'll just show you that again. Clicking anywhere in the column and pressing Control Space selects the whole column of that table if it's formatted as a proper Excel table using Control T. But likewise, we can also do lookups on multiple bits of data. So for example, if we wanted to know based on an order number and a product name what the price of something was, so we could look up the order number and the product name. We can use the ampersand, then we can create a helper column. However you want to go about it is fine. I'm going to use the little ampersand for now. We could look up order ID and a product ID to return that line price. What have I done there? Rookie error. I have forgotten to do my ampersand there. I did it as a comma. So just like we had in the lookup, we had our lookup value being G11, which is the order number, and the product number with the ampersand concatenated together. We're going to have the order ID and the product ID. You've got to be careful with this kind of concatenation approach, because if you were looking up, for example, if you were looking up do I have an example in this data set already? No, but you've got to be careful if you're looking up something using that concatenation approach. If you merge things together and they look like something else merged together, it can give you all sorts of weird results. So sometimes it is easier to, either through a helper column or within the function itself, add in a little delimiter, and we're going to do the same in that case here. So I'm just going to zoom in so we can see this function a little bit closer. So we're looking up that first value and a semicolon and the second value. Those together look like this, and we're looking that up in the entire order ID column joined with the same delimiter and the product ID column to get that line price. The other thing you might have to do in a case, or might be useful to do in a case, is to do a 2D lookup. So that's looking things up in one direction and then looking things up going the other direction. So for example, if we were to take the unique list of month names down the side there, and the unique, another very useful function in these kind of competitions, we're going to take the unique years and transpose that. That gives us all the years in the data set and all the months in the data set. Just going to pull this formatting a little bit wider so we can see what's happening. So we're just going to create ourselves a little reference table for now. We're going to use SUMIFs. If you don't know already, SUMIFs does allow you to do some dynamic array functionality. It can be really useful. So we're going to sum the order price as our sum range. Our first criteria is going to be based on the year. For now, I'm just going to set that to 1, and we'll fix it in a minute so that I don't get moved out of this sheet. And the other one's going to be based on the month name. So that's going to give us an error to begin with. But that order year, we want that to be this dynamic array here. And the order name, the month name, we want to be this dynamic array here, which gives us that nice two-way 2D chart, nice and dynamically without having to drag things across. With that in mind, we can now have a look at doing our 2D lookup. So let's say, for example, we wanted the value for March in 2017. You can't do this nice and neatly like we did using the ampersand here. We have to be a little bit more clever with this. We have a couple of extra steps. So let's start by just finding all the values for March. So if we look in this array here, the little hash symbol, meaning we've got the dynamic array. Of course, this data shouldn't change once we're looking at it, and then return from this amount. XLOOKUP will return us all of those results as opposed to just the one. You have to be careful, you can't return a 2D array, it will only return a 1D array, but those are all the results for March. We could then take a copy of this data down here and then say, okay, well, I'm now going to look up 2017 in this list here. And setting those out as 2 extra steps, a lot of people find that a nice approachable way of doing those two-way lookups. However, a lot of people like to smush those together into one step. So we take what we did for the first step, where we got all of the values for March. We can then look up 2017 in that original thing, and then returning from the result of that original lookup. If that feels confusing, it is a very confusing idea if you've not seen it before. It is often a lot easier to split things out and just have, okay, I'm going to return everything from March, and then I'm going to look up 2017 and return from that list. But if you wanted to nest them together, that's the structure you would do. This leads me to my next key takeaway, which is remember to lock your references probably about 50% of the mistakes I make when I'm solving these cases is I forget to lock my references properly. F4 can be your friend. F4 will let you lock through those different locking styles, so fully locked to the cell, lock only the row, lock only the column, and go back to unlocked. But do make sure you've got those locked down, because it can cause you issues. Before we jump into anything more complicated, I will just say sometimes low tech is best. If you are solving a case by yourself, not on time pressure, absolutely go in, try and work out what is the best way, the most efficient way to do this. How can I really narrow this down, make it robust? But if you are competing on the day in a live case, just do whatever works. Don't worry about having it repeatable, make it work for the data in front of you, and don't worry too much about trying to make it something robust and clever. If it has to be set out with different steps, mark them. I like to colour steps as I go, so I know where the most important bits of information are, so I can look at it at a glance. We can't all just merge things into one cell, and to be honest, it's not always the best way to go about it. It's also worth remembering that the old-fashioned things can be really useful. You don't need to use everything fancy. So you could, if you wanted to get the numbers out of this, you could go, okay, well, I want to use regex extract to get all the numbers out of this, or use some fancy lambda to split out every last character, work out which ones are numbers, and then smash them back together. But we can just nice and simply go 00547, 00341, 00764. You can do it manually. You can see it's then taking off the leading zeros, which you'd expect. Once you've got that manual step done, if the data is coming from the cells on the left, very often you can just press Control and E and it will fill it down. You do have to watch out. It doesn't always catch everything, just like here. Some of these aren't quite what we expected. But if we went back and we force these to be text by using another little trick, using the little single quotation mark, 00547, 00, and we can see Flash Fill has already picked up what our pattern is, and we then have that number to use elsewhere. Using those low-tech things can be really useful. Very often, if you are just splitting stuff out in data, I find that a lot easier using something like Flash Fill than trying to think of what is the complicated 5-formula combination to getting us through that. Already throwing a lot of information at you very quickly. Please do, I see a few people watching on YouTube, please do use the chat on there. I will keep half an eye on it. And if you are on the Discord, please do shout if you need me to slow down for anything in particular. So, speaking of those old-fashioned ways of approaching things, it's just as fine to use something like text to columns, or remove duplicates, or Flash Fill, or any of those other approaches, as it is to try and use some fancy function to do those things for you. Depends what you're most happy with, what's going to get you there fastest. Looking at the next set of questions on these examples, we've got a list of board game names, starting with Don't Wake the Stakeholders, and we've got a word number thing here. Text split is going to be one of your best friends doing these competitions. Now you could, like I said, use text to columns. Let's use text to columns here. We're going to say it's delimited by a space, and then we're going to put the destination next to it, and that will split out our results there. And to be honest, that's going to get what you need, so there's no need to use text split if you don't have to. So we could just do index of this list and taking this number to get the second word, the third word, and so on. So contrived, dashboard contrived, sheets of Nottingham, root cause analysis, row 4 regression, great Western lookup, etc, etc. But if you wanted to be sure you didn't miss something, particularly if you're looking at going on to a more advanced level, it's often very useful to use something like text split, which allows you to have a more robust dynamic array approach to these things. So for example, text split of this set of data, Text split takes one argument, which is the text you're splitting, a second argument, which is your column delimiter, that is what character would we use in text to columns to split it out. And for now, we're going to ignore all the other ones. So we're going to say split by a space. And we can see that gives us very similar stuff to before, with the benefit that we can change our calculations here to use the dynamic array spill of those results. That means that even if one of them sneakily has 20 different words, it would still pick that up. So for example, if we just smush some of these together, audit Call of Cthulhu, you can see it still splits the whole thing out, and if this were the 10th word, it would still pick that up absolutely fine. Let's go with 9th, so we get 9th word, so we get something more recognizable. Text split, really useful. It can also split things into rows, so you don't need to text split to a column and then transpose. You just ignore that first argument and make your delimiter the second argument instead. But if you had something something different again, something which had two different types of delimiter, so we've got a space and a hyphen, we can use both of those together, and that will split us out by the hyphens across columns and the spaces across rows. Doesn't come up very often, but sometimes those sorts of things do pop up. How are we doing on time? Nearly 20 minutes in already. I'm going to stick with a few more tips and tricks to begin with. You're going to want to have a way of turning numbers into text and turning text into numbers. Now you can use the text function, but for that you have to remember what format you want to use. If it's something nice and simple to convert text into numbers, you can just use a couple of different tricks. So for example, if we had a text which is just a set of numbers, like this fake phone number here, we could split this out with a dash, but if we then tried to sum those, it's going to give us a 0. The reason for this is text split always returns a string, always returns what Excel thinks are words, because you're taking a sentence or a set of characters and just splitting those out. This is also true for anything like regex extract, mid, left, right, all those sorts of functions tend to return strings, text. And Excel just treats that text, even if it looks like a number, as not a number. So you could use something like number value and wrap it in that, or value, or any of those kinds of things, and then our sum would work. However, doing this in a competition takes extra time. You can just force it into being a number by saying times 1. Another approach some people like is making it negative and then making it positive again. That also works. So for example, if we didn't have that on there, we'd get a 0 there, but if we times 1 or plus 0, Dan Rinaldi calls this doing nothing, the power of doing nothing. He has a really good session on YouTube about that. I can see some comments on YouTube. Glad you are enjoying it so far. If you are on the Discord, feel free to join us on the Discord as well, and shout if you have any questions. Another place that this is really useful is if you have a set of trues and falses. You may know in Excel, if you try to add up how many things are true, you're going to get 0, just like with text. But under the hood, trues are 1s and falses are 0s. So we can use that trick again to force these into numbers. So we can times by 1. For whatever reason, I normally see this used minus minus for the true and false, but the times 1 approach works just as well. And then you can sum that result to get how many trues there are in that set. You can do that all just in a single cell as well. So we can do sum of this times 1. If you're using this kind of times 1 in a more complicated calculation, make sure you have got everything wrapped in brackets properly to force it to calculate the way you want to. On the topic of ones and zeros being trues and falses, Excel actually treats any number other than 0 as a true value, and we can see this using the sequence function. The sequence function, another very useful function for generating, let's say we want 20 rows, or if we wanted 20 columns, we'd leave the first argument blank, and it would set them across, and we'd have those there. You could do 3 by 20, and you would get a 2D array. We're going to have just 5 numbers. We're going to, by default, it starts at 1. We're going to tell it that we want our start to be -2. It goes up by 1 each time. You could also change this to change the step to have a different type of sequence. And of course, all these arguments could be based on other inputs in the question. But to show this true-false thing here, we're going to take this sequence here, so -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. I'm going to take the whole thing to show you that it works in one cell, but it also works if we were referencing that. And we can say, if sequence of this, we don't even need to say anything in particular, let's take this value for true and this value for false. And you can see that -2, -1, 1 and 2 are all treated as trues by Excel, and only that 0 is treated as false. That can be really useful if you are doing some sort of calculation and something really complicated is happening, and you think, okay, well, it could be a negative value and that's fine, or it could be a positive value and that's fine. Either case, I want to do something, but I don't want to do something if it's 0. Then all you have to do is say, if this, then hello world, goodbye. Normally, people think that for this kind of thing, you'd have to do equals if, or this less than 0, this more than 0, close brackets. And that does work as long as you type the word or and not the word of. -1, 0 gives you the false result, and any other number, including decimal numbers, by the way, things really close to 0, they all give you that true result. Text, I don't think, treats text as true in this case as well. Let's take that out though and just have the value itself without any comparisons. 0 is treated, a blank is treated as false, 0 is treated as false, any other number is treated as true, and then it will error for text in this case, but there are then ways you could use that to make it not error if you wanted something based on text, but most likely it's going to be based on numbers, and so you can skip all that if it's less than 0 or greater than 0 stuff and just say if the value. Going the other way, if you wanted to force these numbers, because these are numbers because we're adding 0, if you wanted to force them to be text for whatever reason, the text way of doing that is just to append an empty string. Bear in mind, this can cause you issues if you're doing that with empty results from other string functions in some cases. So just be wary, it might give some odd results, but most of the time you can just coerce them into text values using ampersand and the two empty quotation marks. Looking at my list, we've already talked about dynamic sum ifs. That also applies to average ifs and max ifs, those functions as well. The next thing on my list is letters, making sure you can split out strings. So it's a really common thing in these competitions to say split something out by the number of letters rather than the number of words. Let's get rid of this for now. A lot of people do it in a way like this. So they would say mid of the text, starting at a sequence of length of text, number of chars 1, and we're going to make the sequence go across so that we see it, and we can see that splits it out letter for letter. Lots of characters, lots of competitors like to make this sort of thing into a pre-prepared lambda. That's great, but that can be quite complicated. You don't have to remember what your lambda is called. You have to remember to import your lambda, neither of which I'm up for doing on a game day. There is a way which is a little bit simpler, but also a little bit more complicated, and that is using regex. Regex is very complicated. There's no way around it. If you want to do everything with regular expressions, it's a very complicated thing. However, the basics are quite easy to get on board with. So we're going to use regex extract to take our things out. We're going to do it based on that text, and then in quotation marks we're going to put what our pattern is, our regular expression is. In regular expressions, a full stop, a period, by itself means any character. By default, that's all you need, but it will just return you the first character, whatever that character is. But if we go in and change that return mode to 1 for all matches, we get the same result as this, but this is easier to remember in my head because it's just one function name, the thing you're looking at, a single full stop, and a 1. The other benefit for me for this is if you wanted to get every 2 characters out, you'd have to make a number of adjustments to that other approach. Whereas in regex, all you would have to do is add some curly brackets after your full stop and the number of characters you wanted. Bear in mind that doesn't do the overlap. It's worth looking at the this approach if you did need to do overlap. There are ways of doing it with regex, it just gets complicated. By overlap, I mean this sort of response here. Some good notes on the YouTube chat about OA Robot. If you are lucky enough to have access to OA Robot, that is available. It's one of our sponsors by amazing project by Eric Ohm, available for purchase. If you have OA Robot, you are able to import lambdas through that. It does all sorts of great things to help you in the competition, but assuming you don't have that, assuming you want a nice easy way to pull out letters in text, I really recommend looking at the basics of regex. One of the other reasons that I really think this is worth doing, I'm going to start a new tab for this, one of the other reasons I think this is really worth doing is if you had something like a map case with a bunch of things here. We're always seeing issues where people are trying to split out cell names in these map-based challenges. It could be that one way of doing it would be to just do it manually or partly manually and then use Control-E for flash fill. Some people like to use indirect. If you're doing some big complicated calculation, indirect probably isn't the way to go. Regex is great for this. I'm going to teach you 2 more little regex tricks, and I think they're really applicable to this kind of thing, and there's not a lot extra to learn, so we're just going to go through those now. So just like before, if we use regex extract and we took out, as we did before, that would split it into each individual character. We could then calculate on each of those whether they're a number or not and do some magic based on that. I'm going to show you one more thing, which is if we put a plus next to it, that means at least 1 character, but as many characters as you can get. An asterisk does the same, but it will also include 0 characters. Doesn't really matter at this point whether you use the asterisk or the plus. So for now, that's just going to give us the results we're looking at. But we're going to change this full stop, this period, to \lowercase w. The lowercase is important here. This means word characters. So that, actually that's not what I want at all. Word characters is useful. It does do letters, numbers and underscores. What we want is number characters. So that's \lowercase d for digit. And you can see that pulls out just the digits from this. And you might want to wrap that in a ×1 to make it into a number, and then there you go. If we wanted to pull out the letters, then that's a little bit more complicated. We want square brackets and A dash Z for all the letters from A to Z. I'm also going to do that in lowercase. I'm trying to times it by 1. That's why it's giving me an error, and that will give us our full pullouts there as well. So that is just some ways of using regex. It does get really complicated very quickly, but knowing how to pull out single letters or single numbers or individual characters from a string with regex, in my head, is a lot easier than some of the other approaches. Sticking with map cases, once you've got those characters out, one of the things you very often then need to do is work out what column number that is. Again, that could be very difficult. One way I find to really quickly pull that out is to say, start with a sequence of columns that's longer than I'm going to need. So let's just say 200 for now. I assume no map cases anyone's going to see anytime soon are going to be more than 200 columns wide. I make no promises. And then we can use the address function in Excel, use row number 1, and use this array to get our addresses. We can then use our regex extract on this whole thing and get out our A to Z with a plus at the end after the closed brackets. And that gives us, including our multiple letter column names, our column names. And then once you've got that out the other side as well, insert a column here, we can just X match our letter names here on this array to get what column number they are. The final thing I'm going to show you before we jump into looking at a couple of bits of old money and then answering some of the questions that have been sent and any questions anyone watching live may have is group by. I really recommend practicing with group by and getting used to it if you have the time. Very often in these competitions there are questions like, what is the most common occurrence of, how many times does X happen, and that sort of thing. And there are ways you can do that. So for example, you could take a unique of your customer IDs, for example, and then say some ifs, order price based on customer IDs. I put 1 just so I didn't break anything, and then take that array in there. That would work, that's absolutely fine, but then you'd have to wrap that whole thing in a sorts and sort it by the second column by -1 to get your top result. It is nice to be able to do this all in one function. So we're going to group by. I'm going to group by our customer ID as our row fields, our values are our order price, and sum is our function. Whoops, sum is our function. I'm using eta reduced lambdas here. If you don't have eta reduced lambdas, you can do this as lambda x sum x. That's all we're doing. We're adding up everything that it gets. And then going through, I'm going to change this back to sum because it's easier to read. And then going through all the way to sort order, we want the second column and we want it descending, so we make it negative, and suddenly we have that top most occurring value. I find this a lot easier. If this is new to you, you've never used group by before, and you're not entirely sure what's going on, there is no shame and no problem with building it out step by step and then sorting it. In the competition, whatever you feel most comfortable with is best. That goes for all of these techniques. It is worth making sure you know how to, whatever way you feel most comfortable, split out text, look things up based on multiple criteria, one-dimensionally and two-dimensionally, go back and forth between numbers and strings, split things out into individual letters or numbers, and do this most common occurrence. I think that's everything for my overall skills. Unless there's any questions straight right now, just having a quick look at the YouTube comments and at the Discord. Unless anyone has any questions right now, we're going to just have a quick little example of some stuff based on old money. Someone's asking on the Discord, is there a way to use group by with multiple sorting criteria? Yes, that's a very good question. There is. It's a little bit confusing in that you are, as group by gets more complicated, you are limited by some of the stuff it can do. You can you can have, for example, use HStack to have multiple group rows. So for example, we might have customers and dates. It will then, let's make these dates look like dates. Short date. It will then group all the customer ones together, all the customer twos together. By default, I'm going to take this sort out. By default, it will sort ascending by this column, and then ascending by this column, and so on through for everything other than your values. You can also HStack calculations. So it's now given us some helpful headings. Not a great example here because there's only one per date per customer, but let's change this to year maybe, and change that back again. And let's whack a count in there as well, and we can see this person had 2, so they've got an average there. It's not the same, so there are a couple like that. So you could sort by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to sort by the count. But you'll see it is what it's doing here is it's sorting by the count based on the entire customer 95. So what we need to do is we need to go to this field relationship thing at the end and say it is a table, not a hierarchy, and then it will stop trying to group things together based on that first column. So we can see that these two had the highest count. We can then HStack those sorts. So we want to sort, that's not the sort at all, that's the field relationship. We can HStack those sorts, so we can say -5 and then -4. So we want the highest count and then the highest average. At least I thought we could. Perhaps we cannot. Perhaps I have made that up. Let me just have a quick look here. That is -4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can do this, I think, for the row fields. Yeah, it will let us do that for the row fields. It looks like it won't let us do that HStack sort for the values. If that was something you needed to do, this gets very complicated anyway. So I would much rather, in that case, rather than dealing with all of this, this is somewhere where if I were actually doing it myself, I probably would just build it out like this, and then I would probably wrap that in a drop to get rid of those generated headers. Drop and take, really worth looking at, and then I would just probably manually pass that through a sort, so 5 by -1, and then wrap that in a second sort, but 4 with -1, and that would get us, doing it the other way around. There we go, trial and error. Trial and error always suits me best. We can see we've got our totals there. We could take them out of the group by or just ignore them, and we can see that this is sorted by the count and then by the average. So for the people with 3, it's sorting by the average first. So there are ways to do it. I do think it is worth. I do think it's worth knowing when to cut your losses, like we did there. If things just aren't working for you, go to something simpler and build it out. Not everything needs to be the super smart approach every time. I also see on the chat, I see someone saying any recommendations for map cases. Not to toot my own horn, there is the Many Maps of Merlin, which is free on our website. It is a 2-part map series. It starts easy and gets ridiculously hard. I have also released videos on how I tackle those 2 cases. I know I wrote them, but it is me tackling them as well. So they are on, I think part 1's on my YouTube channel and part 2 is on this channel that we're on now, the FNWC UK channel. It might be the other way around. I would recommend that as a starting point for maps. Bear Island is another great map case if you wanted to go into the, I think that's a paid case, but that's over at the proper FNWC, the MEWC, the Microsoft Excel World Championship website. Let me just load up, making sure I don't show any spoilers. We are just going to have a quick look at some of Old Money before we finish up. We've been doing some questions as we go. I've got some questions that some people have sent me as well, so I want to get onto those as well. Let's have a quick look at this level, which was marked easy medium, but I know a lot of people struggled with it. In this case by Harry Watson, we were looking at pounds, shillings and old pence and converting that to modern pennies. This is an old way of using money in the UK. It's using the pound symbol for pounds. 1 old pound is the same value as 1 new pound. Shillings, there are 12 shillings in a pound, he says, going up to check. No, 20 shillings in a pound and 12 old pence in a shilling. Where were we? Here. And what we want to do is we want to split this out and turn it into the number of new pennies based on the fact that 1 old pound is equal 1 new pound, which is equal 100 new pennies. The trick here is the fact that some of these do not have a pound value, or do not have a shilling value, or do not have an old pence value. If this were simply pounds, shillings and pence each time, then this would be a little bit easier. We could do something like text split of this by a space. We could substitute, will it let me say pound, shilling, decimal like that, or will that just confuse it? Nope. Well, we could say substitute the pound symbol with nothing, wrap that in another substitute again, and say replace the shilling symbol with nothing, and then do the same thing again to get rid of the pence. So we could do that and then calculate everything based on the values there, making sure that we then times it by 1, of course, to turn those into numbers. However, we do have some of these outliers which are going to trip us up if we go down that route. So we need to go about this a different way. Let's start with our text split as we had it before, and let's build everything off this dynamic approach. I'm going to pull this down here, and we can see exactly as we said, some of these have only got 2 of those entries rather than all 3, and so they don't always appear in order. They will always go pounds first, then shillings, then pence, but if they're missing one, it is not shown. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use regex extract. We talked about this a minute ago, but this is where it becomes really useful. So I'm going to look at this entire thing here, and I'm going to take out \d for numbers, for digits, and then a plus to say at least 1, and then close my brackets, and you'll see that we get the 4, we get the 7, and we get the 10. Excellent. That really helps us. We can pull that down, we can see that works as intended. Now we're going to use our substitute, and we're going to substitute this with this, and replacing them with blank strings, and that gives us whether it's pounds, shillings, or D for old pence. I'm also going to take this opportunity to multiply this by 1. That's not going to change our substitute function, as it already coerces things into string, it's into texts. So now we have the numbers and what each of their symbols are. So we know I'm going to use I'm not going to use switch. I'm going to build, I'm the X lookup king, I'm going to build us a little lookup table. So we are going to, a shilling is worth, an old pence is worth 1 old pence. A shilling is worth, did we say 12 old pence? And a pound is worth 12 pence per 20 shillings for 240 old pence. So I'm going to look up this array here, in here, returning from here. Now I'm making sure I lock those references, and then we're going to multiply this by our dynamic array here. And that gives us a nice dynamic array, which will give us 2 results when we need it to. I'm just going to wrap this all in a sum for now, and this is the number of old pence. And this is exactly where, because this feels like a natural breaking point in those calculations, that's where I like to then add some sort of colour to help me keep track if I go away and come back to it. So we now know that it's 1054 old pence. We now want to change this, I guess, into the number of pounds, because we know that pounds are the same in old money and new money. Is that what we want to do, or can we go about this a different way? We know that 240 old pence is equal to 100 new pence. So if we did this divided by 240 times by 100, so that's its worth. So it would be £4.39, which is £4.39 in new money. Let's just check that those are actually correct, and I've not led you down the garden path. Oh, some of those are wrong. What has gone on here? Okay. Points to anyone watching live for if you can spot what I have done wrong, because I am stumped. Round, someone says. Ah, is it solely the fact that if I had read the question, it says round? Now there we go. Make sure you round your answers if it tells you to round. We do normally at FNWC UK. I can't say always, but we do normally. There we go. That is all it was. We do normally ask you to give whole number answers for exactly that reason. We don't want anyone getting wrong answers because they missed a rounding like I did there. So that would be one way of approaching that, using some of those ideas. I think we are now at 10 to 8. I did promise to try and keep this under an hour. I do have some questions from people not on the stream. So someone asked, what will the format be like on the day of the finals? Anyone that has qualified for the UK Live finals, you should have already had an email about this. If you haven't, please reach out. But we are arriving early in the day. Registration starts at 10, between 10 and half 10. And then the structure of the day is you're going to be solving 3 cases with some breaks in between. Those breaks will be, some of those will be like lunch breaks, breaks to little rest breaks. Some of those will be presentations, talks from some of the people there, including the FNWC UK team, and of course looking at the results between each round, and finally at the end of the day, that final winner. Obviously, the winner gets the fantastic FNWC UK belt. Very excited to see someone take that home. I think at the minute, Chris Wilson is one of our wildcards through the Niche partnership. He has the Niche Championship belt, which means he's the only person I'm aware of who at the moment has the chance of ending the year with 3 Excel Championship belts. He could have the Niche one, the FNWC UK one, and the World Champion one. I think that would be a tall ask, but he's the only person that can do that as far as I'm aware. Someone else asked if we can have monitors at the event. I did tell that person to go check the WhatsApp chat. We are working that out at the moment, so if you're coming, please check that. Someone else has sent me a message elsewhere asking about maps. I think that must have been before I responded to Lara's question about maps on the Discord. Are there any other questions either on YouTube? I appreciate YouTube is on a delay, or from the people we've got on Discord. Any other things? Oh, I have to do this a lot. How would you go about that? Or format questions that anyone might have. I will say the biggest mistakes that I make tend to be silly ones, like not looking at my references, not rounding my scores. Make sure you're doing all of that. Also, if I'm competing live, I get very distracted by the scores. Do not look at the scores if you're competing live. I think then, if there's no other questions coming in, thank you all for watching. The next round of the international competition, the Microsoft Excel World Championship, is Thursday morning UK time, this Thursday the 28th. I am commentating on that with Nick Boberg, which will be very good, and we have our very own humble MVP taking part live as well, so make sure you join to check out that live stream on the MEWC official channel after the challenge this week. Excellent. So for now, thank you all for watching. If you're looking to learn some more things, obviously there's the FNWC UK channel, there's my channel, but also Diarmid Early and Giles Mail did a fantastic bootcamp playlist, which you can find here on YouTube. That's way more than an hour's worth of content. Diarmid's channel in general, very good, as well as plenty of people sharing all sorts of fantastic solutions to these challenges online. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully see you all either at the live finals for the UK Championship in September or among next year's competitors. For now, thank you very much, and we will end the stream there. Thank you and goodbye.